Education to the more fortunate youths of our generation is taken for granted. 264 million children do not attend school and wish they could. In post-conflict areas, education is seen as an optional luxury rather than a necessity. In 2017, UNESCO released a statement stating, only 83% of children who go to school at all complete elementary school, and only just 45% of children who go to secondary school, aged 15 to 17, will finish. How can we live in a world where that exists? How can we allow people who have already been through so much not receive the education they deserve? In 45% of countries, education isn't even in their legal code or constitution. In these broken areas, the little education that children receive is subpar and nowhere near a good standard. This is due to the fact that teachers don't have any teaching knowledge, let alone a degree. Girls in particular are less likely to have an education. Only 66% of countries have reached gender parity in access to elementary education. Gender parity is an index or a measure to see access to education between genders, so if it is equal or not between males and females. In Chad, they have as little as 40% of funds needed to provide an education system for all. People who are in post-conflict areas who don't have an education have been forced to choose paths of life that will keep them in a place with no benefits. Living in temporary homes in places such as Syria, South Sudan and Yemen. Trying to survive should seem hard enough, but imagine not being able to sustain or get a job just because you don't have an education. Schools in general are very expensive to build with the money that people don't even have. Communities expect children to stay at home rather than go to school and get an education. In post-conflict zones, it's dangerous to even find an area to set up a school, as they'll never know if they are or aren't safe. All these factors pull the quality of education down in these areas. Even in a non-formal environment, it's very hard to give the child the education they deserve, as they may not be as attentive. In many post-conflict areas, the ratio of teachers to students is outrageous. In an area called Bauchi, Nigeria, the ratio of students to teachers is 1 to 78. This would mean that the teachers can't give quality education to most of the students. School supplies are also pretty basic. Countries are also very reluctant to fund the education system, as they are more likely focused on rebuilding their country or providing aid for those harmed. This would mean that the training the teachers received to teach isn't surpassing any acceptable standard, and the equipment isn't sufficient either. An example where they brought up the standards for education after a massive conflict was Liberia. The nation had to address the difficulty to transform the schooling, teaching and instruction areas, as well as rebuilding their entire infrastructure. The wartime left most of the schools and other education-related buildings destroyed, as well as the total absence of teachers. Liberia firstly focused on a lot of education at primary school level with slogans like "back to school" and "stay in school." They then began to rebuild their schools when the people started returning back in large masses. The country now has a better education system compared to before. Education is a necessity, especially for those who have received none due to reasons such as price or availability. Without education, poverty and instability will become enhanced, and later generations will suffer greatly. Without education, the children of today will grow up without the knowledge of contributing to a peaceful, economically and politically stable society.